You're listening to ProdCast, the personal productivity podcast from CRM Audio, with your hosts Matthew C. Anderson and Joel Lindstrom.
All right, hello, and welcome back to the next episode of ProdCast. My name is Matthew C. Anderson, and with me, as always, co-host Joel Lindstrom.
Did we get any feedback from our last couple episodes?
Well, I tell you what, the one that got the most feedback for me was the inbox zero commentary that we had, or taming the email beast. I got several pictures from people. I don't know if they were bragging or trying to, make me feel uncomfortable with just how many unread emails they had in their inboxes. But no, it was great seeing that in there, and it's one of those things I really appreciate. Kind of seeing some of that. And I also know that there are a lot of very productive people out there who have a ton of email in their actual inbox. And I want to make sure that, as people, listen to this, it's not that there's a must-have of inbox zero. That's not the intent as I'm bringing it up. But it's, it's all about how you interact with that and how you use those tools you have. So keep those pictures coming.
Yeah, that's great, and maybe people are viewing you as their email therapist or something.
I could only hope I can charge a nickel for every email. That's how I'll become a millionaire.
Right.
But kind of so keying off of that, I'd like to dive into a topic that I think is related. We brought up a little bit in the context of that last episode, but it gets into specifically with one of the techniques that I'd been talking about and how I tame the email beast using categories and then searching for it. I'd like to talk a little bit more about the importance of search and having a good search process and how valuable that can be in productivity. So to get things started, I mean, do you consider search to be an important productivity tool?
I do, because, and I think I mentioned in the last episode that when I come into my inbox and it's got 50 unread emails, it's very intimidating. So the way you eat that elephant is I search by, in my case, company names that I'm working with, because I'm usually working with a number of companies at the same time, and that will get rid of, and that will weed it down. And if I can see 10 emails from company A, look through them, see which ones I need to reply to, which ones are just FYI, which ones don't even apply to me. Then I've got people that report to me, and I want to see if they do. I have saved searches for management. So if people, my boss or his boss, email, I want to know about that. And then I've got certain groups, like I'm a Dynamics Business Solutions MVP, and so I'm part of a distribution group that gets a little chatty sometimes. And so, a lot of times I can search that. I like to peruse it, but I don't always give it my closest attention, because sometimes it's somebody who had a issue or a question that I don't really care about, and there's 25 responses to it. So doing that, I think I can get through about 100 emails in about 15 minutes.
Oh, right on. So, I mean, if I'm hearing you correctly with that, a lot of it has to do not just with search and pulling up a blank search, but using that concept of a saved search. Am I hearing you right?
Yeah. Now, depending on which email tool I'm using, I've found some are better at doing that than others. So Outlook filters and save filters work pretty well, but I'm not crazy about the way it displays them. Once you get several of them, it's not the most intuitive. So I'm hoping you have some hacks or whatever you want to call it, and how to do it better than I'm doing it right now. Frankly, a lot of times I'm just going manually searching, and I know there's got to be a better way.
Got it. Yeah. So a couple of things for me. I mean, I'm a big fan, as I mentioned in the last episode, of that concept of using saved searches, but I try to use them very judiciously. And I use them in combination with certain category flags that I will put on things. And the way I set up this system is for every big thing that I'm working on, whether it's a project that only spans a short period of time, or whether it's something that's more ongoing, like a group or a community I'm part of, I try to set up a category that I can flag these emails within my within Outlook for myself. So, I have a good example of one I mentioned before, which is waiting for a response, which is a general category of stuff that I'm waiting for an answer on. But much in that same way as I'm working on several different projects, I can have those flags to quickly tag things so I don't have to think of the right search terms later. I can use a good enough tagging device along the way that will make that search later on a heck of a lot more simple. And that same tool that I'm using there works well across many different email platforms. So for my work stuff, I'd use the Office 365 platform, and that flagging and categorizing works really well there.
Are you using Exchange rules or Outlook rules for that?
So I do have a couple of Exchange rules set up to be able to flag those for me, but oftentimes once you start categorizing something, if you're using Conversation View, as you mark one, that Conversation View picks up the other emails that come in. So as a new email comes in for me, it will automatically flag it for me, and I don't have to manually set a rule for it. It recognizes that it's part of the conversation.
Okay, so what you're doing then is manually triaging it when it comes in, and you see the message and you click the flag.
That's not the flag, but the category, yes. Okay. But then over time, it will automatically continue that throughout the thread for me. So as 2 or 3 or 4 more emails come up, something comes back, I can see it as part of, like, it's automatically categorized in that way for me. So there's some heavier lifting up front to be able to get to that euphoria later on where I'm not having to do the same amount of effort on that.
How do you do that for non-work emails, personal emails, or maybe email on your phone?
Yeah, so that's a good question, and frankly, I don't use much of that for phone usage. The categorization that I do, the search folders, that kind of thing, much of that is focused on the desktop, and what I use the phone for is to be able to search through the overall archive, and that's much more of a one-off search where I will enter in that search term to try to find it. For a lot of the personal email, for a lot of the personal, that type of thing, I use Gmail as one of my primary ones, and there's a tagging scheme that you can set up. So you can create tags that can be applied, and I do have several different rules set up within Gmail to be able to automatically flag those types of things. I have that for as I track certain things that come in from that are more some of my side stuff that I do, like podcasting, like game playing, and those types of things. Those automatically flag with rules that I have set up within that Gmail tagging system. So it's much the same way between the two platforms, even though they call them different things and they operate just a little bit differently.
So when you say search folders, are you actually having the tagged or the categorized things go to an actual folder?
So I use a very simplistic system where I just have one folder called Archive that everything goes into. But the beauty about using the system that I'm talking about is you can, if you already have a system of different folders that you like to put things into, you can continue using those and still use the categorization. When you search for that category, it's going to return those from multiple folders. So what this lets you do is sometimes you have that mental point of trying to figure out, well, which folder should this email go into? It's about customer A, but it's about project B. Which of those two folders do I put it into, or do I make a copy? What do I do? You can put it into either one of the folders. You can categorize it with each of the different categories that are appropriate to make it easier to find later, and that way the specific folder doesn't really matter. Now, the other thing that I have set up specifically is called search folders within Outlook. So this is a concept that's part of Exchange where you can store a saved search and it looks like a folder on the left-hand side of where all your inbox is and the rest of your folders are, but it saves a search. And I set up literally the criteria for that search to be that the emails with a certain flag color on them and the name of that flag that I have applied are the ones that are going to be returned there. So I don't have to go looking for that across potentially, several different folders. It's all going to come dynamically to that one search folder.
Okay, I see that now. When you go to the folder tab, you got the new search folder, and then you've got the choice of unread mail, flagged for follow-up. And so basically I can say mail from or mail sent to a specific. Does it have, and you can also have mail with specific words as well, I see here too. So let me create one here. So if I create one for Acme Corporation or something, then that will create a folder. Now, is that actually moving it to a folder, or is it just a virtual folder?
It is a virtual folder.
Good. Because, okay, here's the mistake I've made. I made this a couple times, which is I create an actual folder called follow-up, and then I would actually move email to it, and then I promptly forgot it was there.
Yep.
Or had, I had this productivity tip that I think Scott Hanselman or somebody posted something one time saying, create this rule that moves email that isn't sent directly to you to this other folder so you can focus on the important stuff first. Then a month later, when people were talking about all these emails about the insurance plan and the annual review program, and I said, I never saw those emails. I realized, I set that rule up a month ago and then I forgot about it.
Yeah. Yeah, no, it's definitely a pitfall, and that's part of. I've run through some of those same issues before, and that's why I've migrated to such a simple system of only having one folder called Archive. But these search folders are pretty powerful. I mean, you can have it target things that are unread email or things from specific senders or specific lists or things where you're in the to line or where you've been carbon copied. You can set up these pretty intricate searches for those emails. So especially as you're trying to get ahead of your email, maybe you're behind, you're one of those people that has 5,000 in your inbox, but you'd like to process that down without having to declare email bankruptcy. Search folders can be a great way to help triage and prioritize which of those emails that you're going to have, so you don't miss the important ones, but you can also have something more digestible that you're going to try to work through.
One thing that's a little bit hard to come to is what's the right number of categories, because you can have too few, but you can also really easily get too many of them.
Yeah, so you bring up a great point, and I know that for myself, this number actually kind of grows and shrinks over time. I don't have just 10 and only 10 categories that I have things sit in. I have 2 that persist that just help me process email. They're email threads where I'm waiting for a response, and there's emails where there's some activity still going on that I want to stay aware of it, but I don't want to just file it into the archive and have it sit in the bulk bin. So those are the ones that persist. Then I will have anywhere between 2 and call it half a dozen different search folders for specific projects that I'm working on, or kind of threads that are important that combine things from several people or several different places. As I think of event planning as one of them. I'm involved both in planning and speaking roles within a number of different events, and trying to corral all that into one place is a very common search folder that I have as we get into event season. I'll set one up for each of the different events that I'm looking at.
I realized the other day I was getting too many, so I kind of try to pare it down. It's really kind of how I use my Wunderlist, where I've got different categories of notes there, of tasks on there. But even that gets a little bit hard to manage sometimes, because I find I have so many different folders and categories in there, I forget to check certain ones. So yep. I need to keep it down to at most probably half a dozen or less.
Yeah, and I think the biggest thing I'd recommend to folks, especially trying to get started with it, is start small and grow. Keep it manageable at first, and you'll probably have that pendulum swing back and forth a couple of times before you figure out what's right for you.
So how often do you weed out the archive folder then?
So the archive folder, just to keep it kind of manageable and something that I can deal with on a very as I'm searching through it, it just doesn't have so much bulk into it. I make sure that as everything kind of hits a 1 year mark, I delete out anything that's hit that 1 year mark from my archive folder. At that point, if I haven't copied some contents of that email into a OneNote notebook or something like that, the chances that I'm going to need it are extraordinarily slim. The 1 year mark, I've looked at that several times, and I wonder, am I saving too much? But it's one of those where the disk space premium is reasonable enough where I'm not pushing up against any kind of limits. The searches aren't taking too terribly long to be able to run, so I go with that. It's also a nice mental round number. I don't have to start looking at things and, if it was from March, was it from March of this year or March of last year? If I just know based on when I last cleared out the email.
Right. And what I found is, and again, I don't do the archive. I've done actual physical folders. Although now that I know how to use search folders, I'm probably going to start tagging and doing that because I have too many folders right now. But anyway, what I was going to say is, though, I realized the other day, though, that I was using my deleted items as a crutch because, I was clearing out my inbox. I was just afraid to clear out the deleted items, and because I just thought sometime I need it, and I just asked myself, well, how is that any better? I'm just moving the junk somewhere else, and so I actually cleared it out. Just got brave one day, cleared out. I think everything deleted before January 30th or something like that.
Yeah, that's
and.
Great.
Since then, I've spent about a month, and there's only been one thing I found that I wished I still had that I was actually in there, and that was a software key to Snagit. I had my Snagit key in there. I need to reinstall that, but a quick email got me a new key, so nothing really lost.
Yeah, TechSmith is pretty easy for picking those keys back up. But I hear you on the deleted items. That's one where I actually, while my archive folder gets cleared out only once a year, the deleted items folder I try to do once a month, but frankly it ends up being once a quarter for me. And, to that same point, very, very rarely do I run into a situation where I can't find what I'm looking for. On the topic of search, so much, we've talked about a lot of this in the context of email, but so much of this can apply to things like, OneNote notebooks or that information that you're storing in an email where a quick Bing search or Google search could get you that information again. The kind of strategy and proficiency that you get with being able to search and search well and know how to kind of feed in terms to a search engine, whether it's something like a folder or something as ubiquitous as Google search, it's a technique that can serve you really well across a number of different platforms.
Right. That's a good topic for a future episode, would be personal archival and storage, because I find I'm continually frustrated that I find I have a bunch of artifacts that I don't need and really don't need, but then I'm regularly running into things that I do need that I can't find. And so, for example, managing medical receipts is my big thing, because it's like I have things for doctor's offices and things that I don't really need to keep, and then major stuff I can't find. And so, knowing how to manage those personal artifacts is something I'm constantly struggling with and trying to get better at.
Yep. Yeah, definitely a great topic. All right. Well, we've talked a lot here about something that is rather productive, and I think it's always interesting to hear, a little bit different of a take of how somebody does that. But if I could, Joel, I'd like to talk about something that I ran across since our last episode, which is definitely not productivity, but it is being billed as productivity. Could I bend your ear?
Be an ongoing segment called "That's Not Productive."
I think that is a perfect title for this, because this is definitely not productive.
Are you going to make us a theme song for that segment? The very unproductive sounding song or something?
So,
That's not productive.
Challenge accepted. Sounds really productive.
All right, so what's not productive this week, Matthew?
So what's not productive this week was actually sent to me by my wife. She sent me a post from a popular life hacking website, and we can make the link available in show notes. But the tip, or the productivity tip that was included here is, it's related to playing tabletop role-playing games, and the title is "Make Your Players' Handbooks Infinitely More User-Friendly with Some Tabs." And literally, as you read through this, the tip is, use sticky tabs in your books to be able to find pages. And hey, don't get me wrong, sticky tabs are a great tool. I use them all the time, but simply suggesting use sticky tabs without more context doesn't actually drive productivity. And I don't just want to complain about this, so here's a way to be able to take that idea and make it a little better. Let's talk about what type of sticky tabs to use. There are a lot of different sizes and colors, and how do you use those colors to label different things, or what are the pros and cons of sticky tabs versus taking notes and having a page reference. How many sticky tabs is too many? I mean, those are the types of things, if you really want to be productive or help people with productivity, that's the sort of thing that I know I want to hear in a tip post.
Right. But just go out and get a bunch of sticky tabs, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, that's the... I don't know how many times I've seen people get really excited about buying nice new folders and office supplies, and they end up in a big jumble in somebody's desk drawer by a couple months later, because it's not just about having the tool itself, but it's having a strategy and how you're going to use it.
This has been ProdCast, the personal productivity podcast from CRM Audio. You can follow Matthew C. Anderson on his blog, connectingthedata.com, where you can download his ebook about 8 essential Skype for business hacks. You can also follow him on Twitter at MC Anderson. Joel Lindstrom is on Twitter at Joel Lindstrom. Do you have any feedback for us or questions about how to be more productive? Send an email to mail@prodcast.show or leave a comment on the CRM Audio Facebook page. You can subscribe to ProdCast at prodcast.show, iTunes, or subscribe to the CRM Audio feed to get this podcast and other series from CRM Audio. This is Joel Lindstrom. Until next time, remember to stay productive.